And we're live. What's up, everybody? All right, we're going to review Rudy's recent appearance on Surrounded on the YouTube channel Jubilee. A few people have requested I do this, so what the hell? Let's do it. Before we get started, a little bit of background about my relationship with Rudy. Rudy and I have been friends for many years now. He used to frequent the channel quite a lot in the early days. In fact, I'm grateful for him because he's helped me get the channel started, because he already had an established following when I launched it. And his appearances helped me get some of the first viewers. So thanks, Rudy. Ever since the Noam Chomsky debate, he's refused to come on. He hasn't explicitly said that's why he hasn't come on, but he was upset with how I moderated that debate. He felt like it was unfair to him. I don't think it affected our friendship. You know, we spoke about it, like all good vibes since then, but he has not been on the channel since. I will say I have lost a lot of respect for him in the past few years, primarily for his lack of ability to give true criticism of Israel, as Israel's carrying out one of the worst atrocities in the 21st century in Gaza. He set up a booth somewhere in New York saying, "I served in Gaza, ask me anything," and made it seem like Israel was operating in the best way possible when all data available tells us otherwise. And again, maybe his anecdotal experience in Gaza was different, but when you look at the big picture, Israel's actions in Gaza is not defensible. And this will, without a doubt, be a stain on his legacy, because as time goes on, as we continue to make moral progress, as we get more and more information out of Gaza, it will not be remembered in good light, and anyone who defended it will, have defended a major atrocity as it was being carried out. But that's his shit to deal with. I would describe Rudy's political views. He's kind of like a right-wing Zionist progressive. I know that sounds weird, but he's right-wing in the sense that he wants all the land to be Israel from the river to the sea. But he doesn't demonize Palestinians. He doesn't dehumanize them. He speaks fondly of them. And he wants them to be part of the state, but at least last we spoke, not as full equal citizens, but to have some amount of rights. So right, that's definitely like a right-wing Zionism. The whole land is ours, but the fact that he doesn't blame Palestinians for their oppression, that he doesn't demonize them, is very unique. So credit where credit's due. Let's see how this goes. Share screen. And it's an hour and 40. I don't know if I'll do the whole thing. Let's see how much energy I have. It's been a long day for me. Okay, we'll put it on 1.5 speed. You want to join the stream, Peach? Come. Peach, you can also give you a review, okay?
ICE agents right now are currently being trained by the accusations.
It's been more than 2 years since October 7th, when Hamas attacked Israel, killing over 1,200 innocent people and taking hundreds of hostages. The war that followed has devastated Gaza, killing over 70,000 Palestinians. Peace now rests on a ceasefire that many believe will not hold. So where do we go from here? From Jubilee Media, this is Surrounded, where one brave soul faces a room full of disagreeers. I'm your host, John Regalado, and today we are facing the divide head on. I'm here in the center with our featured guest, Rudy. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being here. Are you ready to jump into the debates?
Always ready.
All right. Debaters, are we ready to begin?
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it.
I'm Rudy Rochman. I'm a Jewish and Israel rights activist, and today I'm surrounded by 20 pro-Palestinian activists who completely disagree with me. My first surrounded claim is that Israel is not committing apartheid or genocide.
All right, if you would like to be the first debate.
I hope this isn't like a boring semantic debate on terminology. There's a debate on the use of the term genocide. Apartheid, there's no real defense for that, but let's see how it goes.
Debater, please get to the chair in 3, 2, 1.
Let's go. Good. How are you?
So before I start, I want to lay some groundwork. I want to start with a working definition of genocide, some legal and historical examples, and then I want to demonstrate Israel's intent, their policies of genocide, and then the results. So in terms of a working definition of genocide, it would be to destroy, with the intent to destroy a group in whole or in part. Some historical legal analogies that I think are analogous to the case of Gaza is the case in Bosnia, where the Bosnian Serb army killed 8,000 men and boys. This was ruled to be a genocide by the ICJ. Another 30,000 women and children were forced to flee. This was done so to facilitate an ethnic cleansing. So murder under the laws of war to motivate a population to be ethnically cleansed. In terms of Israel's intent, Benjamin Netanyahu said it plainly and clearly last year under testimony with the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Knesset. He said, we're destroying more and more houses. Sooner or later, they'll have nothing to go back to. Our problem right now is just finding a country that's going to take the Palestinian refugees. So they're murdering Palestinians in Gaza en masse to attempt to bring about the demise of the Gaza population, create conditions unfit for human existence by decimating civilian infrastructure, etc. Now, in terms of a policy, we can look to the Where's Daddy program that's being used by Israeli intelligence through a Lavender AI system, where they spot what they suspect to be low-level Hamas operatives, bomb them when they're at home with their family. So you can't claim Hamas is using Palestinians as human shields when most of what Israel's actually doing is targeting who they suspect to be low-level Hamas operatives when they're with their family. This is backed up by the demographic data. Reuters pointed to the fact that over 1,300 families' bloodlines have been wiped out in Gaza.
It's actually higher now. This was as of like a year ago. It's higher now, but yeah.
Gaza. Sometimes as much as 4 generations of Palestinian families are being wiped out. Sometimes as large as 14 members of a Palestinian family is being wiped out. So again, we have policy, and then we look to the effects. 65 doctors wrote in the New York Times in a guest opinion essay, doctors that are observing in Gaza, they're participating, they're volunteering in Gaza. We don't have international journalists in Gaza, so the extent to which our international testimonies are often from these doctors, paramedics, and nurses. What they described.
So let me
Sure.
you said a lot of things.
Yeah.
First of all, I think that's he made a strong argument.
Sure, go for it.
So first of all, I'm against the murder of any individual person living in Gaza. I see Palestinians as my family, as my cousins. If I see another individual who's, let's say, from America or Palestinian, I will automatically feel more connected to Palestinian. We have mostly the same ancestry. We're connected to the same land, and our descendants will be eternally connected to one another. So whenever I see a Palestinian innocent life taken, that is a horrible tragedy. But you got something wrong from the very beginning. That genocide is the intent to eliminate a population. Now, you might not be successful. So they were not successful in many cases with Nazi Germany, with Armenians, but it was the intent to try to eliminate the population. Now,
so can I ask you then? Do you think that the Bosnian Serb army did not commit genocide in Serbia?
I think if the intent was to eliminate the entire population, then it would be a genocide. If the intent is to kill.
You see, this is Rudy's operating with a different definition. He says the intent to kill an entire population. This guy, whatever his name is, established the legal definition, which does not require an intent to destroy the entire population. So they're not even operating with the same definition. This guy is using a legal definition. Rudy's using kind of a colloquial definition. How many people perceive genocide, right? When you think genocide in your mind, you think the Holocaust, you think the attempt to exterminate a population. That's many Jews' reference point for genocide, but that's not really how it's defined. Now, if we're using a strictly legal definition, then you also need to prove intent, which is quite hard to prove. So using the legal definition comes with its own set of challenges. But let's see if they could work through this.
A lot of people in order to do ethnic cleansing, which is another thing, which is also problematic. Okay,
so you're saying it's ethnic cleansing, not genocide.
No, I'm not saying what's going on is ethnic cleansing. I'm saying that there are individual politicians who support the idea of removing Palestinians.
I'm not talking about individual politicians. I'm talking about Benjamin Netanyahu,
which would be ethnic cleansing, and I'm against that.
And you agree that the quote I cited earlier would be the intent for ethnic cleansing, right?
The way that you sourced it would be, but I don't think that that's actually what he said.
That's from Times of Israel.
We should fact check it and see the whole entire context.
Okay, yeah,
if we find that Bibi Netanyahu has the intent to remove all the Palestinians from Gaza, I am against it.
And you would say that's ethnic cleansing.
Wait. I mean, Netanyahu's made that clear many times. The relocation plan is something he's endorsed on multiple occasions. There was a white paper circulating in the Knesset on October 8th to relocate Gazans to Sinai. Now, it is true you should relocate Gazans, get them out of a war zone, but it was to move them to Sinai with no intention of letting them return, which is ethnic cleansing, right? It wasn't build them a refugee camp and then let them return once the war's over. It was to remove them indefinitely. So that was Israel's stated goal on many occasions. Hold on, those watching on YouTube, give me a minute because I am seeing that we're not. Those on Discord are not seeing the stream. Let me know. Can you see it now? Sorry about that, guys. Okay, cool. Looks like it's working. But you were able to hear, right? So at least that. Cool.
Ethnic cleansing.
Okay, great. So
now that we're agreeing that there's a difference between ethnic cleansing and genocide, and that I'm against both, let's talk about the claim of it being genocide. Now, when we look at 2.2 million people living in Gaza, and max number is 70,000 by Hamas records, which we know Hamas is constantly lying of how many people are dying. For 70,000 people.
No, that's not true. I mean, this should be basic knowledge by now. It's not. Our institutions failed us. I personally did not do a good enough job convincing enough people that it's not just made up numbers. We have names, ID numbers. They all exist in the Palestinian Population Registry, which Israel has full access to, and they can verify. Israel does not discredit the claim of 72,000 killed. And when you look at the demographic breakdown of those killed, you see record levels of women and children killed in the 21st century. These are violent fatalities. We're excluding indirect deaths. Highest rate of violent fatalities when you account for population size and duration. This is just undeniable. But Rudy, and I don't think Rudy's being dishonest. He just doesn't know this.
People have died. Also, this is in the past 2 years. There are 5,000 people who are dying from natural causes every year, which is also included. The Hamas number.
The natural causes are not included. That's false. If natural causes were included, you would see excess death among youth and among elderly.
Yeah, there we go. This guy's been reading my stuff. I'm telling you. I don't know. I don't know if I could take credit, but that is the exact argument. And I've written this and spoken about this exhaustively. You would see excess amongst elder and lung. Great job. Who is this guy? I should reach out to.
See that with the demographic data. The demographic data is actually directly from Israeli airstrikes.
No, it's directly from Hamas.
It's the Gaza Ministry of Health, which has been reliable.
Which is Hamas.
Okay, they've been reliable in every other armed
that
conflict.
seeks to kill civilians. It's giving you your information.
Why doesn't the Israeli military, if the Israeli military was operating under the laws of war, they would know how many Palestinians died.
You see, that's the annoying thing about Surrounded, is that like let them hash it out a little bit. Why? Because some people want to move on, so they raise flags and then you move it on. He did give a good answer on how we know natural deaths aren't added. He did say they're historically reliable, but that's not the strongest argument. It's that it's verifiable by Israel. Rudy should know this, but he doesn't. It's not just random numbers. I mean, Rudy's completely wrong. Eisenberg lied. Eisenberg duped a full generation of Jews into believing complete bullshit about Gaza. Shame on him. Anyways, let's continue. Oh, where'd my stream go?
Only 70,000 to the max number. That is a small amount of people and very clearly not a genocide.
No, it's also not. It's not definitely the max number. There's those unaccounted for, buried under rubble, and there's indirect deaths, which have not been added yet. So it's not an overcount. It's an undercount by some amount. We don't know by how much.
Rudy, we've got flags up. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Hello.
Salam.
Shalom.
How are you?
Comment allez-vous?
Très bien.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Comment nishmacha?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Very
Alhamdulillah.
good. For a moment, I wanted to believe that you really wanted peace. For a moment, I really almost believed that you wanted the Palestinians to go back to Palestine. But then when you ridiculed and you belittled 70,000 deaths, and you're saying that's just a small percentage for 1.2 million, that is outrageous.
That is not what I said.
That's what I've heard you say.
No, what I said is it's not a genocide, because if it was a genocide, we'd see the intent and the actual murder of a lot of people. And
for the death of,
I started with one person dying. That's Palestinian is horrible. Okay, so remember everything that I said. Palestinians are my family. If any Palestinian dies, that's horrible.
See, what we are seeing right now, what we're seeing right now is, and I hope I'm wrong, is a great act. Sadly, we've seen the president and the Benjamin Netanyahu going out and saying we have to buy social media, we have to influence influencers, we have to work on the young Americans and young Westerners so we can.
Well, let me pause it. I mean, I need to call Rudy out for being disingenuous here. I mean, maybe he cares about Palestinians, but he cares about defending Israel more. Because if he actually sees every death as bad, then why did he not critique any of Israel's policies which contribute to excess death, like completely outrageous levels of proportionality, not doing proper evacuations, shooting anyone on site in no-go zones, systematically destroying civilian infrastructure? None of this is necessary, and it was done. He has never publicly criticized any of this. So does he care about Palestinians? Maybe. But certainly he doesn't care about them enough to publicly criticize Israel.
Win the battle of the public opinion. Unfortunately, that's what I'm seeing right now. You having this soft attitude while serving in the Israeli army while people were getting killed. I'm a Palestinian. I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm a Semite. I'm not anti-Jewish. I have so many Jewish friends.
That's a dumb argument. I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm a Semite. There are no Semitic people. It's not a classification of people. It's a classification of language. But anti-Semite doesn't mean against the Semitic people. It means anti-Jewish. It's like if you accuse somebody of being homophobic and you're like, I can't be homophobic, I'm a homo sapien. Like, that's the level of dumb that argument is, but okay.
But as long as it's legal, I'm going to go out and say every day I'm anti-Zionism because I'm anti-apartheid, anti-genocide, anti-ethnic cleansing. You know, the people here are labeled today as pro-Palestinians, as if it's something it's given. We're not just pro-Palestinians because Palestinians, we're pro-equality, justice, we're anti-racism. If Jewish people are going through the same, we will be pro-Jewish people as well. Trust me.
So you can.
Now, what he's saying is true for like the Western pro-Palestinians. Like, actual Palestinians are not anti-racism, pro-equality. Like that's not really what the culture, like Palestinian culture, or any Middle Eastern culture really is. But it's, I mean, he is genuine that Western Palestinian culture does care about this stuff. For Palestinians living on the land, they just don't want to be oppressed by a foreign population, which is, you know, what people want to be oppressed. So their grievance comes from a very legitimate place, but it's not rooted in equality and anti-racism. It's rooted in dignity and respect, the right to self-determination.
Condemn the attacks of Jews all around the world, including by Palestinians?
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Any innocent
Amazing.
person that's been attacked without a justified reason, my faith tells me
What is a justified reason?
if they're not trying to kill you, if they're not trying to fight
if
you.
a Palestinian commits, blows up a bus, is that justified?
You cannot put this
I'm just
out of
asking because you
context.
said justified.
Absolutely. No, when I say when you served in the army.
Yeah, but can you answer that real quick?
Absolutely, I can answer that.
Can you condemn that?
Absolutely. I'm telling you, I condemn the killing of any innocent soul. That's my faith is telling me to do.
Thank you.
All right. So now when you are trying to say that I'm trying to promote peace and justice, why don't you join a movement like Breaking the Silence? Have you heard about them?
Of course I heard about them.
So why don't you join them? Please.
So
look at
Breaking the Silence is an organization that takes some truths, adds on a lot of lies, and does everything in order to be tokens as Jews.
Yeah. Again, that's bullshit. Breaking the Silence. I have not seen, maybe sometimes they over exaggerate stuff, but the right way to frame them is overwhelmingly they are reporting on truthful stuff. There is no shortage of abuse of power and human rights violations in the West Bank, and Breaking the Silence only covers a tiny fraction of what actually happens. Whatever exaggeration might exist is less than the reality that exists. So that's just a bullshit excuse. The thing is that Rudy just cannot meaningfully criticize Israel. He feels a strong desire to defend Israel, defend the military. From experience, I know he'll say Israel needs to take more responsibility. We're responsible, but that is as deep and as harsh as his criticism will get. And I bet he'll probably make a remark like that here, but he's not going to call out a serious human rights violation.
And as former soldiers who get paid by foreign entities, well, there's a new movement of people who aren't the tokens on either side. There's individual Palestinians who are tokens as well, who will sell whatever the Israeli government wants. Of individuals who are proud and who are strong and who want to see a future where people coming together. You said you're not an anti-Semite, but you're an anti-Zionist. Does that mean that you're against the idea that people have a right to live in this land?
I'm against the idea of what Zionism is doing.
No, so Zionism is an idea.
I'm
asking, are you against the idea that the Jewish people have a right to self-determine on their ancestral homeland?
I don't.
Let's we'll also maybe we'll do comments at the end. Okay.
You know who else did not have that problem? I just told you.
Okay,
you know who
so
else?
Not an anti-Zionist.
You know who else?
The current conflict.
You know who else? You know who else did not have a problem with Jewish people coming to Palestine?
A lot of Palestinians.
A lot of Palestinians.
Amazing.
They opened their doors. They opened their homes. Look it up. Muhammad Hadi, the father of Bella and Gigi Hadid. What is his story? His family opened.
So I mean, that's that. I don't. The whole thing is, if you support Jewish self-determination on their ancestral homeland, then you're not an anti-Zionist. You're a Zionist. That's also just a disingenuous claim. Zionism doesn't just mean the right to self-determination. And here's the best way to know. If anybody were to propose, if I were to say I support Jewish self-determination in the land between the river and the sea, but I do not support a system of supremacy or oppression, which means the state of Israel will be dismantled, but Jews can have self-determination in the neighborhoods that they are the majority. That's a form of self-determination. Overwhelmingly, Zionists would say that is an anti-Zionist and even anti-Semitic position, even though it's a form of self-determination. So Zionism doesn't just mean the right to self-determination. It means this actively supporting the state of Israel. Now, there's still a range of Zionism, right? Because there are many Zionists who will willingly criticize Israel, that are against the occupation, that support two states. But it's hard to separate Zionism from the loudest voices advocating in favor of Zionism. And it just happens to be that those who are loudest in their support for Zionism are also the most likely to demonize and dehumanize Palestinians, whitewash human rights violations, and not give any meaningful critique of Israel, right? The Zionists, the proud Zionists that are willing to criticize Israel are like a tiny fraction of global Zionists. So people are rightfully interpreting Zionism as what it's meant in practice, which is the state of Israel, which has oppressed Palestinians for most of its history, and how their activists present themselves and their defense of Israel. So I don't accept the argument, as long as you support Jewish self-determination, then you must be a Zionist. That's not true. And you know, here's what it's kind of similar to. It's kind of like those who say, you do kind of hear this. Sometimes Muslims will say jihad just means struggle. It's just struggle. And then Westerners are like, wait, that's kind of disingenuous. Jihad is violent struggle. That's how it's been experienced. That's how we've experienced it. That's how we see jihad. It's the same with Zionism. On one hand, okay, fine. It does mean self-determination to some extent. Jihad means struggle to some extent. But you can't blame people for interpreting these terms as they've experienced it.
Open their doors, their homes for a Jewish family, only to come back and say, you know what, this is our house now. You cannot come back again.
You won't see me condemning Palestinians as a whole. You won't see me trying to delegitimize or to
You
demonize
just called, you
Palestinians.
keep calling it Yehuda and Samaria.
Exactly, that's true.
You don't
It
even
is
call it
Judea.
Palestine.
Historically, that region is
the way
Judean
Palestinians were kicked out of their homes, the way a
Palestinians and
genocide,
Jews were kicked out.
the way a
This is
genocide
something we
happened in
did
Deir
both
Yassin. Do you know what Deir Yassin
Yes,
is?
of course I know
You know what happened in Deir
I
Yassin?
know
That's
what
a genocide.
A genocide would be the intent, okay, for a population to eliminate another
That's what
population.
happened.
What you had in 1948
Rudy,
is a
we wanna
conflict
hear-
between two peoples where people got kicked out on both sides,
Rudy,
and I'm
we-
against that.
We also want to hear from him.
Of course.
So you know the problem with the claim that Palestinians left by themselves, they fled.
I didn't make that claim.
That's ridiculous.
I
When
didn't
people
make
say
that
that, you know what, the government that you're supporting, the
I'm
army that you're
supporting the
defending, that is what they're saying. They're saying Palestinians left by themselves.
Some people say that. Some people don't say that.
Believe me, that a lot of people are saying
Yeah,
that.
there are Palestinians who chose to leave, and there are many Palestinians that were forcibly displaced. There's more nuance we need to add to the conversation.
Okay, cool. I appreciate Rudy for being honest about this. Cool. Credit where credit's due.
But there are also many Jewish villages that were displaced as well.
That's not what happened.
That is what happened. Why were there no more Jews
The
in Jerusalem
Haganah
or in
and the
Hebron?
Argon, these are the militias, the terrorist militias that killed so many Palestinians. Those need
And
to
they're-
read what happened in Deir Yassin.
Yes, I know what happened in Deir Yassin, and I know what happened in many other communities of Palestinians, and I'm for Palestinians
now
to be
in
able
Gaza.
to reunite with Israel. But you're looking at individuals that are in the context of a war and then blaming it on the whole idea of our whole collective having rights to this
See, the
land.
thing is that you cannot just, if Trump says, I'm not anti-immigrants, we don't believe him. We look at what
Let's
happened
not
in the
bring Trump
streets.
into the situation. It has nothing to
You
do.
have to look what's happening on the
Bringing in
ground.
foreign
You have to look what's
Western
happening in
white
Gaza.
people
You have to look
into our civilization is why we're in a
saying
problem.
that Gazans were given warning to leave their homes before
This
they
is
get
true.
bombed.
This is true.
This is the most ridiculous thing I've heard.
Well, I was in Gaza and I saw this happening with my own eyes.
I'm just shocked that you're defending that
It's
again
not
and
defending,
again.
it's actually what happened. Does that
And
mean
what you're saying
it's
is okay?
No, it's not okay that we were in war. But
No, it's
absolutely-
okay to say to someone, hey, I'm bombing your house tomorrow. Get out of here.
So let's add some context. If Hamas is shooting rockets from a house, that also
This is-
Palestinian families
this is
are
the
living there. And
propaganda
they-
that
there's
Shooting rockets from a house. The amount of evidence that's been presented of rockets being shot from homes that are occupied with actual families is like non-existent. There's one example that they showed from 2014 where they shot a rocket from behind a hospital, not the hospital grounds, behind it. That's like all we've seen. And here's the thing, Gaza's densely populated. Rockets are shot from many places, but that's not, most of the infrastructure destruction was not to blow up rocket launchers. There was literally neighborhood by neighborhood, systematic destruction of homes. If Rudy was in Gaza, he should be able to be honest about a policy that when soldiers were to stay in a home, after they'd finished staying in the home, they would burn it. They'd burn it down. And their excuse was, just in case we left something, we don't want Hamas to be able to retrieve it, so we burn down the house. So it shows the disregard for civilian infrastructure. You burn a family's property, their belongings, instead of taking 30 minutes to make sure you didn't leave anything, shows a complete disregard. And if Rudy was in Gaza, he should know that this policy was prevalent.
propaganda. This is you saying propaganda to things I witnessed with my own eyes. Before I witnessed it, I saw proof. Now I witnessed it. You cannot tell me it's propaganda because you were not there during the war in Gaza. And inshallah,
No. So again, a soldier can't rely on a personal anecdote to determine how a war was conducted. A, it's an anecdote. B, I mean, most soldiers that serve are not going to be honest about the horrors they saw. Overwhelmingly, they were there. They're supportive of what went on there, so they're not going to give the full account. It's the courageous whistleblowers whose testimony should be given much more weight than the majority who are just going to blindly defend it.
one day we will both be able to go back in Gaza. But during the war, you were not there. This is what happened. When Hamas is shooting rockets from a house onto Israeli civilians, targeting Israeli civilians, and Israel warns the Palestinians
the
living
war
there
did
to
not
leave.
start in
I don't think it started on October
75 years old.
And it didn't start in 1948 either.
So the fact
But
that
it
you're
can
pushing
end tomorrow.
Palestinians, the fact that you're
I'm not
pushing
pushing
Palestinians,
anybody.
not you.
said
I'm
you.
not talking about myself. I'm representing
You said you.
Palestine.
I'm
You're
not
representing
taking
Israel.
Correct. We represent those peoples, but don't say
Correct.
you. You can say they are or Israel is. If something
But you
bad is
cannot come
happening
and
by
say I'm defending
Palestinians,
a movement, I'm defending an ideology, and then
if you are for the Palestinians, I'm not seeing you as Hamas. Okay, I'm seeing you as a doctor in front of me, as my cousin in front of me that has a connection to this land, and we need to be able to build together. moving forward.
I would love to believe this, but the reality doesn't give me a chance to believe what's happening.
Well, the younger generation has still hearts
I'm
that's not
hoping
so
that-
darkened, and we will be able to build
I'm
something
hoping
better.
that as
And then
well.
Okay, we
we'll
have
be
to pause here. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
I don't like the voted out thing. It should just be like everybody gets turn and some set amount of time. I feel like it'd be better, but I guess it's for entertainment value.
How's it going?
good. How are you?
Good. So I'm actually half Lebanese, and you probably can't tell. The reason is because my mom's from Taiwan, which explains why I look like Bruce Lee's gay son, but that's neither here nor there. The first time I was exposed,
I appreciate him taking a very heavy topic and starting with humor. It might make the conversation easier.
to what Israel was capable of was the summer of 2006, the 33-day war in Lebanon. There was a firefight that took place between the southern border and northern border of Israel, Lebanon. Hezbollah snuck it over. They killed 8 IDF soldiers, kidnapped 2 of them, hoping that they would get 4 Lebanese prisoners in return. And how did Israel respond? They decided to blanketly carpet bomb the airports, highways, block the port, civilian infrastructure. One of those was my aunt's home. She's not a Hezbollah member. She doesn't live in a military base. And I also remember at that time, my cousins were vacationing in Lebanon, and they told me horror stories about how they were trapped in a basement as hellfires raining on them. There was no electricity because Israel had bombed the power stations there. They had little water and fuel because Israel had shut off the water and fuel supply. Does this sound familiar? And not only that, they had a friend of theirs whose grandmother was being transported from the south to the north in an ambulance, a marked ambulance with the sirens blaring off to escape the bombing that was going on in the south. And it got blown up. It got attacked. The IDF denied that it happened. So in that war birthed what's known as the Dahiya Doctrine. Even the IDF general at the time, Eisenkot, had said, we will apply destructive force and it doesn't matter. Everything a civilian village is a military base. And this is what we're seeing today in Gaza is the Dahiya Doctrine on steroids. And there is
Yeah, I mean, Israel is very ruthless in their response to terror, more so than many other countries, right? It's always, there's this narrative that Israel acts with a greater level of restraint, but history just shows them acting in revenge in ways that are quite unprecedented. Are there no other countries that would respond that way? No, but it's not like there's some like above some global standard in their response.
Is intent to push them out.
They're in the lower end of the global standard.
There wasn't genocide in Gaza because they weren't trying to push out the Lebanese out of Lebanon, but they are doing that in Palestine.
Okay, so even though this is not a conversation about Lebanon, we can talk about that as well because it's obviously related to Israel, and the PLO were very much so involved during that war, and along with Hezbollah and a lot of different issues that was happening in Lebanon. If you want to go into a country that you're about to go to war with, because Hezbollah is constantly shooting rockets onto Israel, attacking Israeli civilians, killing Israelis, so is the PLO with a lot of terrorism. Hold up, if they're doing that at that time, okay, then the first thing you need to do is to remove the transportation capabilities of the other army, to remove the airports in order to be able to take out Hezbollah and to end the war. What you're all saying of the horrible stuff that happened, that I'm sorry you had any family member that passed away. Palestinians are my close cousins, but other Arabs are also my cousins. We both descend from Ibrahim, from Ishmael and Yitzhak, so we're all family in this region, and it's horrible what happens to war. The conversation we need to have now is what can we do to remove that and to stop us from happening? Because the consequences
You can
of us
stop
using,
collectively punishing the civilian population.
I'm not you.
Pause here. Their flags are up. You've been voted out.
Yeah, again, a little too short. Yeah, he says, what can we do? But I mean, where is Rudy meaningfully criticizing the government for just imposing, oppressive conditions on Palestinians for decades now in the West Bank without doing anything to meaningfully change it, right? So it's what can we do? Okay, well, who controls the land between the river and the sea? Who is the sovereign entity? Why can't you meaningfully criticize them? And I get it. If you love Israel and the world is attacking, you don't want to contribute to that. It is a dilemma. So let me be a little bit more charitable here, because many Jews are in this dilemma. A lot of Jews are not happy with what Israel's doing. They just don't want to be part of the pro-Palestine movement. They don't want to contribute to the hate. They feel like they're contributing to the hate, contributing to anti-Semitism, and they want nothing to do with that movement. It's almost kind of like, how like among siblings, you'll be like, oh, mom's such a bitch. But if like somebody says something bad about your mom, it's like you start throwing fists, right? It's like you could say it about your own, but when other people do, you get super defensive. Something kind of like that. But the truth is, if you actually care about changing Israel, you actually care about Israel, you should lead in its critique. Why should those who hate Israel be the ones who lead in its critique? If you want to reform Israel, if you think change needs to happen, so be brutally honest about what needs to change. And also those who say criticizing Israel leads to anti-Semitism, yeah, to some extent, right? So when the Jewish state, in the name of protecting Jews, is violating the rights of another people, and most Jews support that, that does contribute to anti-Semitism. It does. The same way how after 9/11 Islamophobia skyrocketed, right? Like people respond to the actions of groups and entities, and it affects how they feel about the whole. Should it? No, but that is how people respond to such things. One of the best ways to combat that is for more Jews to actually condemn Israel. Part of what contributes to anti-Semitism is seeing very few Jews actually be willing to condemn Israel. Right? If most Muslims you met were like somehow defensive or supportive or turned a blind eye to 9/11, that would increase Islamophobia. But if overwhelmingly Muslims were to criticize 9/11 and other acts of Islamic terror, that would reduce Islamophobia. That's just obvious. So Jews who refuse to criticize Israel are not reducing anti-Semitism, they're contributing to it. And what's funny is it's so controversial to say that Israel contributes to anti-Semitism, and to those defending Israel, they contribute to anti-Semitism. That's so controversial among Zionists. It's victim blaming. How dare you? But if you criticize Israel, then they'll have no problem saying, well, you're contributing to it. So the only way you can contribute to anti-Semitism in the eyes of Zionists is if you criticize Israel. Then it's legitimate to accuse somebody of contributing to anti-Semitism. As long as you defend Israel, you need to be protected of the accusation. It's inconsistent and incoherent.
By the majority, please return to your seat.
Good, how are you?
Not bad. I want to talk about your claim, which is that Israel's not committing a genocide in Gaza. Earlier, during one of the previous debaters, you said that the definition of genocide was to eliminate a population. Is that still your definition?
Correct.
Okay, so you recognize that that is not the definition of genocide.
That is mostly the definition of genocide.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to know what the full definition
Yeah, okay, cool. So he's calling Matt on not actually following the definition.
of genocide is?
And you're going to say
It's the-
intent, right?
Yeah, of course, that's
Okay,
part
so-
of it.
so
But that's not the qualm I have. It's the intent to destroy a population in whole or in part.
Mhm.
Okay, so you use the evidence of Israel not killing more Palestinians as evidence that it's not a genocide. But the Germans didn't kill every Jewish person. You agree that there's a genocide against the Jewish
The
people, not
intent
the
of Israel
Germans,
is
right?
not to kill in parts the Palestinians
Okay.
either. That is why it's not a genocide, not
what
in whole or in
evidence?
parts.
And okay,
Every action that Israel does is to prevent
Let me
civilian
just ask you a
casualties
question.
from being
Okay,
killed.
how do you adjudicate whether a government intends to eliminate in part or in whole a population?
Right. So if every time that there's an attack against a Hamas site, not against a civilian area that doesn't have Hamas, but specifically a Hamas site that is shooting rockets onto Israeli civilians, and Israel does everything to warn the population there to leave by phone calls, by text messages, by leaflets, sometimes sent 72 hours before, we can see the intent here is to minimize civilian casualties.
And just to be clear,
So this is an example of what Israel
Right.
does in order to
Yeah,
have civilians die
I
at
understand.
large or as parts.
I understand. Just to be clear, the reason you're saying that is because if they didn't do this, which by the way, this is it's actually a funny standard that you give to Israel, that if they drop leaflets before bombing somebody, that they are proactive and that they're trying to save civilian life. That's actually required by international law. So it's the bare minimum.
And
I just want to make clear. I just want to make
warning
clear.
people before
If they
attacking.
didn't do that,
Right.
you would say that, well, clearly that's intent to kill civilians, right?
Not necessarily, but
Okay, so wait.
no,
So
hold
then
on,
why
let me
are you
answer.
so no? Because that's
If there's a
important.
firefight, okay, and
Go
in the
ahead.
moment there's no ability to send leaflets or warning, and people get killed in the process, then there are situations where not warning doesn't make
Okay.
it a genocide. So here's an example when certain situations,
Go
I know that your college.
And it's way beyond that. I mean, Israel had a policy of killing junior militants in their home with their family. Sometimes these are multifamily homes, right? So you're not going to warn and tell them to leave because then the militant leaves. So Israel had a policy of killing combatants in their home with their families. They also were destroying tunnels. This is just based on IDF whistleblower reports, right? That when they would get intel that there might be a Hamas leader in some tunnel, they couldn't really pinpoint the location. Sometimes they would just level the entire block. It would be permissible to kill triple digit just to maybe potentially hit this high level commander. Now, again, you could say that's not intent, but there's many examples of Israel not warning and just killing people in their sleep. And there's also there weren't proper areas to evacuate. It's not like they really had anywhere to go. So to say they evacuated is not. You can't say we evacuated if there's actually no place to evacuate to. They were stuck in Gaza.
You're on the media and everything else, but I actually went to war. So there's certain situations that develop live where Hamas pops out of nowhere, starts shooting at IDF soldiers. There's a gunfight. There are people who are civilians who are killed, and that is not a genocide because they didn't warn. That's why not warning doesn't make it a genocide either. If the intent is to kill people.
You know, almost every single unit in Gaza, like every squad has at least one GoPro, and sometimes you will get GoPro footage of firefights. We have not seen a single GoPro footage of Hamas shooting from behind civilians. It's a trope we hear all the time, but like, just show us a video, drone footage, GoPro footage. Like, show us where's the evidence. If there was proof of this, you'd have every incentive to let the world see. We're not seeing that. I'm not saying it never happened, but the idea that it's prevalent and you can't produce a single video of it is highly implausible.
That's
Then
not what I'm
it is a
discussing.
genocide.
I'm assuming that you're talking about when safe zones are bombed, when refugee camps are bombed, leaflets are
Safe
dropped,
zones are safe
which
before
shows
Hamas
that-
entered, and then they're no longer safe, correct?
Which shows that Israel's not trying to commit a genocide, right? If you made that point that Israel's dropping leaflets, which shows that they're not intending to commit a genocide, supposedly, if they didn't drop leaflets, that would be showing intent to commit a
False,
genocide.
false. I
Then
just
there's-
explained why that's
then
the
there's
case. There are situations that
then your
happen
point,
live.
Then your point, this is I don't know how well versed you are in debate, that's called a fallacy of infallibility.
This
If
is
your
called
point,
projection.
if your position cannot be proven wrong, then it is an illegitimate argument to make.
I've proven.
But let me-
No,
let me-
you
no,
finish
let me
that point.
no,
No,
because
you
this is
finish that
important.
point. And I'm
Because
gonna respond.
Israel
Israel does
give you
everything that it
examples.
can
I will
to
give you
prevent
examples.
civilian casualties. That is a proof that shows that his intention is not.
Okay, they definitely did not do everything they can. I mean, I'm not going to just rehash the same points, but Israel did relatively little compared to what they could have done. And the biggest one is just not allowing Gazans to leave Gaza, right? They were stuck in there. There weren't proper evacuation zones. The evacuation zones were relatively small, could not fit, did not have infrastructure to sustain life, cannot fit more than a few 100,000 people at most. That's not proper evacuations. And then again, there's just grotesque levels of proportionality, shooting everyone on site, insert no-go zones, not letting food and water in and aid in for months at a time, and systematic destruction of civilian infrastructure. That's not doing everything to protect civilians. The bare minimum was done.
Not to kill Palestinian civilians. Do Palestinian civilians get killed?
I'm going to give you an
there?
example.
No,
I'm going to give you an example. No, you want to finish your point.
Of course,
You want
I'm
to finish your point because you've interrupted me and you don't want me to say
your claim. And now
there.
Do you want to use Al-Mawasi as an example of a refugee camp being bombed without leaflets being dropped? By your own standards. By your own standards.
By the world standards. By the world standards, they're not.
Here's something most people don't think about until it's too late. I was paying kickoff, start zero interest. Without
Zionism is anti-Semitism.
if you would like to debate.
Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Okay. Well, I just love then that there's a global growing contingent of anti-Semitic Jews then. Great. It's awesome.
This claim, please get to the chair in 3, 2, 1.
All of this is to sow chaos and distract from the focal point. We are opposed to an occupation imposed on the occupied people. If I'm opposed to that occupation, I'm opposed to the ideology of that occupation, which is Zionism. Therefore, I'm not against the people that supposedly tie themselves to that identity. I'm against said identity. So if I'm against Zionism, it should be very clear I'm against anyone who supports it, whether they're Jewish or not, because you mentioned Christian Zionism. You're obviously opposed to that. So am I, because I'm not about this person or that person. If there was a Muslim Zionist, I would be opposed to them. It's the ideology, not the person. And the actual, in my opinion, most Zionists are Christian.
Well done. So he established that he's against what Zionism has meant in practice, not some theoretical self-determination, but in practice. And that's not the same as being against people. I think that's a very strong and coherent argument.
Christian Zionists, yes, you can go ahead, but all of this is a smokescreen to distract from the focal point.
It's very sad that you have so much pain in your heart and have gone through so much that someone speaking in front of you that actually has compassion and is genuine in front of you have to see it as tactics or that there's an objective or that there's a motive. There isn't. Okay, I see you as my family, like I've said before. These are not just because we need to hear it over and over and over because we're denying it and rejecting it, and that exists on both sides. I say it to Israelis all the time. I debate Israeli extremists all the time. We need to be able to transcend. Now,
He debates Israeli extremists all the time. Okay, maybe just not publicly.
Let me explain why. Let me explain why Zionism is a form of anti-Semitism. Right? There are many ways that someone can be against the population, including the Jews. Hitler wanted to kill all of the Jews. Some Nazis wanted to just kick Jews out. Some Nazis wanted to have Jews there, but just give them different rights. There are different ways of being anti the Jewish people. One of the ways of being anti the Jewish people is to be against the idea and the movement of our right to live in our ancestral homeland.
Who determines that right? Why do you have the exception to say I have a right to do this? I have a right to do that. Like, where does that exception come from?
But so you see, he's saying it's anti-Semitic to say we can't live in our ancestral homeland. Okay, but most anti-Zionists are not saying Jews need to leave the land. Most anti-Zionists are saying you could live in your ancestral homeland. You just can't have a system of inequality and a system of oppression. That's what anti-Zionists are anti, right? So, and it's also why the term Zionism and anti-Zionism just causes more confusion than it provides clarity. It's not helpful to meaningful discussion, but he's talking about self-determination, but he's talking specifically about policies, right? They're kind of talking about something completely different, but it's also, there is something a little bit dishonest in Rudy's framing, because again, if I were to say Israel needs to be dismantled and Jews can live in their ancestral homeland and have freedom, that would still be considered an anti-Zionist position. So that's not what Rudy means when he says that's all Zionism is. It's the continuation of the Jewish state. And I hope we get into it. I want to hear what Rudy thinks the state should look like. But last we spoke, it wasn't full equality for Palestinians. So he's saying Zionism is Jewish self-determined in the form of a Jewish supremacist state. He won't use that language, but that's what he's describing, a Jewish supremacist state, where Palestinians can live good lives, but they won't be equal. And if you are against that, then you're anti-Semitic. That's essentially his argument.
Why do you have the indigenous argument of any indigenous people's rights to self-determination?
Which is part of the smoke.
It's not debunked. It's actually been proven. A lot of people even here claim to be Jewish, and you know your ancestors are Jews as well from that land. We come from the civilization, both of us, the Jewish people, are indigenous. That is the civilization you actually descend from, and you opted out by either converting to Christianity or Islam or Arabized over time.
The same way you say you didn't do it, my ancestors, which is not me, my ancestors that I can't speak to.
60%
maybe they were Canaanite, maybe they were this, maybe they were that. That doesn't matter.
Palestinian ancestry, according to genetic studies that have been done over the decades, shows that they descend from the Jewish population. And in cities like Yatta, Yafo,
Okay.
Sfat, Hebron, Shrem. If you go to East Jerusalem, those population of Palestinians is up to 90 to 80%. Again, like I said earlier, you can find publications like Nature, American Journal of Human Genetics, studies done by Nebel, by Hammer, by Behar. These are very clearly proving that Palestinians descend from there, and so do the Jewish people. If the Jews want to live in their ancestral homeland, that is a form of decolonization.
All of this is a moot point that could be debunked with a 10-second Google
It's not a moot
search.
point. Someone distracts the focus. Google actually gave all the sources.
They're not really, I mean, this format's annoying, right? It's just a few minutes. They're kind of interrupting each other. They get voted off. They don't get to resolve any points. And it has like 1.5 million views. So it works. It's a format that works, but it's not an optimal format for conversation, which is one of the reasons we're building Head On, right? To actually have optimal conversations.
Out by the majority, please return to your seat.
April 2025, the IOF forces made a complete blockade, no food aid, no shelter, nothing getting in to Gaza. There has been 470 people, mainly women and children, that have died from severe malnourishment, and it's expected to be 10,000 of these people who died from severe malnourishment. It has been declared a famine in Gaza. Famine. There has been journalists. This is the highest amount of journalists that we've ever seen die. 270 journalists have been targeted, killed. This is more than we've seen in World War I, World War II.
Yeah, no, that's not true. That was widely debunked. So the 470 something famine deaths, that definitely seems credible. There are estimates that famine deaths are in the 10,000 range, though they're not talking about only malnutrition. I think that estimate it's interesting. I actually just spoke to Shadow about this. So Shadow, thanks for priming me, because I did not know this would come up, but it seems like they're sourcing the exact guy you just told me about. But the 10,000 estimate describes famine as the lack of anything needed to sustain life. So lack of medical equipment, infrastructure, food, all that stuff. That's a famine death. And the estimate is 10,000. That seems plausible. But the most journalists killed since more than World War II is just definitely not true. Though it has been a very, like relative to population size, it has been a very high number of journalists, just not the most.
The Civil War, the post 9/11 wars, all combined.
Okay, you made 2 points.
No. These are my points to say this is what happens under a Zionist regime.
Okay, so this is what happens during war.
This is what happens during genocide.
I'll let you finish.
Oh, this is what happens during war. No, not letting food, water, and aid in is not just the necessity of war. It's a choice. It's a decision. Come on, bro.
You starve a population?
I didn't do anything. Okay, don't you?
I'm sorry.
Okay,
the Israeli
we can
government.
talk about the Israeli government.
Sure.
Right now, it's media as human beings that are talking about the situation.
But
right?
you support it?
No, I don't support people being starved and people dying and
But you're
people
supporting the
suffering.
regime.
I understand why things are happening, and I'm trying to focus on that in order to change it from happening so that people don't die anymore. Not just using selected instances of Palestinian suffering.
I wish they would just ask him, so do you condemn Israel for XYZ policy? Like ask him to condemn Israel for that policy.
When it fits an agenda in order to manipulate
Selective
that.
starvation?
No, are you
473
talking about the thousands of Palestinians that died in the Syrian civil war, by the hundreds of thousands?
I'm talking about people that are in Gaza right now that are not having, they're living in tents. They're dying from being freezed out and having no, but I'm talking about these contexts, right?
Bro, you're literally having an Israel-Palestine debate. Why are you whataboutisming to Syria? Like that's completely irrelevant. There's very good reason why Israel gets disproportionate attention, but it's not really relevant to this debate.
That are suffering as well.
There's 197 buildings that are rubble now.
And the
197 buildings.
The reason why aid was blocked, which I'm not for.
197, much more than that. Tens of thousands. I don't know. So in some of her numbers, some of her claims, she's overestimated. That was a low, like way under exaggerated.
Or is because Hamas was stealing all of that food? Yes.
That's a bullshit claim. We don't have evidence that they were stealing all of that food. Both the UN and Israel actually said they could not confirm that Hamas was systematically stealing aid. We do know that armed militias were stealing aid, but there's many armed militias in Gaza, including some that Israel supports, and we do have some evidence that those militias were stealing aid. But that doesn't justify not letting aid in. In fact, the reverse is true. If Hamas is stealing aid in order to monetize it, the solution is to flood Gaza with so much aid that it's not monetizable. Create a supply, such a great supply that the cost goes to zero. In stopping aid, you only allow it to be more monetizable, and you just increase the incentive for whether Hamas or other armed militias to steal it. So that's right. So that doesn't make sense. That's not a justification for not letting food, water, and aid in. And the given justification also was to put pressure on Hamas. Like you could actually see an incentive to do so, right? If the Gazan people start starving to death, maybe they're more likely to turn on Hamas. Maybe Hamas soldiers are seeing their family members starve to death, so it creates internal turmoil. You could see an incentive. It's not legal or moral, but that's clearly the reason why Israel did it. It wasn't so Hamas could monetize aid, because if they didn't want them to monetize aid, then they'd find ways to get as much aid in as possible.
Hamas was stealing that food, killing other Palestinians.
So don't you think you should let more food in instead of blocking it? Where's the logic
I think
there?
should have been done. Here's a legitimate criticism.
More
Israel created a
food
safe zone.
You know
what Israel could have done is to remove the population from where Hamas
when they
is.
come out from the food aid, they'd all be shot in the same place on the same day. The one day people would come in with a shot in their arm, everybody, because it was a game.
Okay, Hamas shooting
Oh,
Palestinians.
yeah, okay. If the ISIS backed gangs that Netanyahu has already agreed to.
Flags are up. You can vote it out.
Well, I think criticizing a regime is not criticizing identity. That was a point that was already brought up. But I have a question for you. Do you agree with the current strategy with the Board of Peace in order to bring stability to the Gaza region?
I don't.
What are some of the criticisms that you have?
So first of all, I completely agree with you that criticizing a regime is not anti-Semitic. Like I said earlier, I don't know one Israeli that doesn't criticize the Israeli government. That's not anti-Semitism. That's not anti-Zionism either. When you're against the right for the Jewish people to live there, that's when it becomes anti-Semitic. Now, when it comes to the Board of Peace,
But that's not true. I mean, he's saying when you're against the right to live there. So is Rudy's position that if you call for the dismantling of the state of Israel, but Jews can remain on the land, then you're a Zionist? He would never agree to that. So what fallacy is this? I don't know. Maybe one of the viewers can tell me. He's committing a logical fallacy. It has some Mott and Bailey-esque nature to it, but I don't think it's quite that.
and Trump's policies and trying to create the French Riviera in Gaza and all these things, we are on the same page that this is horrible. There should be no imposition of the United States, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, or any foreign entity coming into this land. This is the land of the Israelis and the Palestinians. We have to create one civilization for both, where we have equality in this land.
And so it's a democratic state, a one-state solution.
Yes, one civilization I call, because one state implies
you don't believe
the current political system.
You don't believe that Jewish or there needs to be a Jewish identity that's central to the governance
of
Israel. So how could it be a democratic regime if everybody has autonomy and equal rights, if one ethnicity is prioritized over all others?
Question. This is honest conversation. I'm happy we're having it. So first of all, they're non-negotiables for the Jews and non-negotiables for the Palestinians. For the Palestinians, it's the right of return and freedom from the river to the sea. That creates a problem to today's Jewish non-negotiables, which are full economic, political, and military control for the land. Jerusalem is the capital, and the third temple is built. Now, how are you going to have these two things that are non-negotiable for both? Well, the idea of Palestinians returning to the land makes a demographic problem and a cultural problem. Today, a lot of Palestinians hate Israelis. They wouldn't want to live in Israel.
And it's such an overgeneralization. I have to stop.
A lot of Palestinians,
just to say to the camera, what this is.
No, saying many Palestinians hate Israel is not an overgeneralization. It's a pretty undisputed fact, and understandably so.
Advocating for is an ethno-state that prioritizes one particular population over those that already have a regime
into people's hands.
That is
I did not say that there were priorities of individuals. There's a collective that are indigenous to the land. It will be.
We'll let you continue.
Yes, let me finish.
I'll actually give the truth to the camera as soon as you're done with this bullshit.
There's 16 million people, Jews, in the world, right? Those are the descendants of 2.5 tribes. There are 9.5 tribes that are missing as a part of that number. We were 12 tribes once upon a time. That population today that still identifies as a part of the Jewish people are 100 million outside of the 16 million, and half of them want to make Aliyah to move to Israel. So we would have 50.
No, bro. What? I mean, I can't fact check this now, but they're saying there's 9 tribes and they have 100 million descendants. And I mean, he's working on a documentary about the lost tribes, but I mean, some of them are not really the lost tribes. They either converted or have some like distinct connection, but the idea that half of them want to move there, I would need to see a source for that. Sounds highly implausible.
Million Jews coming back to the land of Israel. Palestinians also returning. A lot of things have to happen before that day happens, where we change the culture, we create freedom of speech, which does not exist in Palestinian societies. We change the structure of education, and once we have something that we can both live together, we can have our aspirations together.
It is just,
now, are you Palestinian?
Can I continue?
I'm just asking one question. I want to understand.
I'm not Palestinian, no, and I don't believe that identity gives credibility to those arguments.
It shows someone speaking as a fan or as a player.
No, a fan
or a player. Are you pro-Palestinian or are you Palestinian?
I don't think that we should view this as a fucking sports game, dude.
I'm sorry. It's not a sports game.
I can recognize an atrocity when I see it because I believe
is October 7th an atrocity?
I believe that any innocent life that has died is
October 7th an atrocity.
Any innocent life that dies needs to be condemnable.
So much for recognizing atrocity.
I just said any innocent life that dies needs to be condemnable. All I'm saying is it is an insane point to say that being anti-Zionism means you're anti-Semitic, because you're spitting in the face of Jewish voices for Palestine. You're spitting in the face of Jewish voices for peace. All of these are people that recognize their identity as Jewish people that can also call out atrocities when they see it, because they don't believe that just because they have a shared ethnicity means they need to endorse an ethno-state that is brutally killing people indiscriminately. They can recognize when they see something that is a human rights failure and advocate against that. What I want to make clear real quick, and I'll let you speak. I will conclude,
and I'll let you respond after to your next time. Okay, there are populations within within all peoples that turn against their own. There are individual
so Jewish
Palestinians. Let me
voices for
finish.
Palestine
Yes,
are turning
they
against their own.
they are tokens who side with their oppressors in order to try to be accepted in a modern world.
How is Palestinians oppressing Israelis when Israel's
They
controlling the region?
side with the world that hates the Jewish people and hates Israel and are attacking it in
Israel
order
is
to be
the only
accepted.
military in the Middle East that is backed by the most powerful regime in the entire world. So what are you
Actually, they're
talking about?
supporting also Egypt and they're supporting other places because the intent of the United States is to create conflict in that region and to profit so that you and your country can go and profit over here.
I don't know about that. That's a little conspiratorial. The U.S. funds nations so they remain in their sphere of influence and they have some control over them. It's not so they're constantly fighting so they could profit. Yeah, maybe like defense contractors, weapons companies would like that, but that's not where the decision generally comes from to fund these countries.
That money goes straight to U.S. weapon companies, which I'm against. I do not want involvement.
We have to pause. We've got flags up. Can you return to your seat?
So I want to do something. I want to start with good faith, okay? This issue gets all of us seated. I can recognize that, me, myself included. So I'm not trying to do a gotcha. I'm not trying to be offensive. I want to first recognize that you are someone who is separate from the, precondition of Israeli rhetoric of never, ever recognizing Palestinian identity or existence. I think you're doing it in a strategic way, but I want to recognize that you have moved the bar a little bit. So that's commendable to an extent. But you fail to recognize the pain that's not in front of your face. You say you see your Palestinian, comrades, your cousins that are sitting here, but not the ones over there. So your claim was anti-Zionism.
The ones there too.
Okay, anti-Zionism is, I'm going to make my claim. You said anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. But you constantly come back to this idea that people who are anti-Zionist don't want Jews to be in Israel. But that's not what anti-Zionism is.
That's what Zionism
I'm not
means.
finished with my
Nice. Okay, let's see how she does here.
claim. Anti-Zionism is that Jews should not have supremacy when they are there.
That's not what anti-Zionism is.
And when you're discussing anti-Semitism, what I really struggle with, and I want to bring up Peter Beinart. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is a Jewish scholar, and I really recognize that he is doing something important, which is bringing the voice back to why Jews should be against this in the first place, and why when they're not, it creates conditions of anti-Semitism. I believe your efforts are more anti-Semitic because you're creating a monolith of the Jews. You are saying Jews are never capable of committing such violence. Jews are always the victim. In the Book of Esther,
yes.
When Purim, the celebration of Purim, right? Can we recognize that 75,000 Gentiles were killed by the Jews? Did Jews commit that atrocity?
No.
They didn't. So this wasn't in the Book of Esther. This didn't happen?
No, the Jews did not commit atrocities.
Because Jews are not capable of committing atrocities.
Jewish individuals are capable, of course.
What about
the
Jewish collective? So Israel is not a Jewish collective? You just keep saying that Israel is a Jewish collective. It's not?
Israel is the country of the Jewish people.
Okay.
Would it be hypothetically capable of doing something wrong? Absolutely. Has it also done other
Hypothetically, okay.
things wrong? Yes. I'm not talking about that. The state.
Okay, but what? It's always so vague and shallow, the criticism. Yeah, they've done stuff wrong. Yeah, they need to do more. It's never a real criticism of a policy, of a war crime. Never, at least never publicly.
It is not capable of doing things that are wrong.
Do you recognize that when you say every Israeli criticizes the Israeli government?
To show that criticism is not anti-Semitism.
But here's the issue.
So you're not criticizing, you're demonizing.
In Israel, a Jewish person can say, I don't believe in God. But if you want to be part of the Knesset, you cannot be anti-Zionist. So you can't actually question the system from within. You cannot question the structure.
Anti-Semitism, there are 3 Ds in order to recognize them when it comes to Israel. If you demonize the Jewish people, if you delegitimize our existence,
every person
and if you're holding a double standard,
I'm making an assumption. I might be wrong. Every person here looks like they're anti-Zionist.
I let you communicate. I'm going to address the actual point, which is the claim that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. If you're trying to delegitimize the Jewish people's right and claim to the land and existence, if you're trying to demonize us and make us seem as monsters and take out all context to make it seem as Israel's the worst thing in the world and now connected to other problems in the world, if you're trying to hold a double standard where you care about some Palestinians but not all Palestinians, you are an anti-Semite.
I wasn't going to get passionate. I did. So I'll apologize for that. I'll come back. I want to address that. Don't move forward.
No, I'm not moving forward. I'm finishing the point. Zionism is the idea. This is why definitions are important. Zionism comes from the word Zion, which is Jerusalem, and the idea that we have a right to return and self-determine on this ancestral homeland. To be against this idea, to be anti-Zionism, is against the idea that the Jewish people should have a right to self-determine. That is anti.
So before he said anti-Zionism is saying we can't live there. Now he's saying self-determine. But what does it mean to self-determine, right? So if self-determination means being able to live there and have your rights protected, okay, fine. I don't think most anti-Zionists have any objection to that, right? So most anti-Zionists are not against that. They're against the state of Israel and its Jewish supremacist nature. That's what people are rejecting. And if somebody were to want to end that Jewish supremacist nature, which would be fundamentally transforming Israel, that it would be quite unrecognizable, Rudy very well may say that is anti-Semitic. If you call for the dismantling of the state of Israel, he would say that's anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic, but so he's getting closer to conceding that, but he's still making it seem like it's just living there or it's just self-determination. But let's see how this goes.
Semitic. Now, if you're against certain policies the government is doing, the treatment of Palestinians, the suffering of Palestinians, that is not anti-Zionism. That is being pro-Palestinian talking. We have to differentiate those points. When I'm saying that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism is by defining Zionism. And you know who gets to define Zionism? The Jewish collective, the Jewish people. And if you're going to source me individual Jews that you can hold on a handful who, unfortunately, due to the trauma that we face and the generational trauma that has been projected onto our people, then end up siding with an oppressive world that always blames the Jewish people for all problems, that is not a source of reference. There are individual Palestinians who also hate all the Palestinians, and they're not the people I'm going to source to talk to the Palestinian people.
I want to identify something. You're in your claim, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Yes.
I'm going to make an assumption that every person around us is an anti-Zionist. Here, can you identify one anti-Semitic rhetoric that someone has said?
There's delegitimization of our identity, saying, oh, no, it was originally the Canaanites. It wasn't the Jews. You guys aren't the real Jews. You guys are converts. All anti-Semitic points. Then there's demonization. Oh, you guys are monsters.
Wait, who said that? No one said that.
And you kill indiscriminately, you carpet bomb. Then there's holding double standards.
That's true. I mean, like, that's completely true.
Where you don't care about actual genocides happening in the world. You don't care about Palestinians dying in other cases. You only care about using them when they can be used as Israel.
So again, the double standard thing is bullshit. Okay, no human in history is capable of caring about all conflict in all lives equally. We all have some hierarchy of care, and it's dependent on many things: physical proximity, ideological similarity, some other form of kinship. So, yeah, the Palestinian cause has taken decades. It's a movement that has been built for decades to become part of the Western consciousness, causing Westerners to care about it. You cannot expect Westerners to rally and care as much about something happening in the Congo when there isn't a decades-long movement built to bring what's happening in the Congo as part of the collective consciousness. It's completely legitimate to pick a cause. And in fact, the amount of attention Israel gets, yeah, it's disproportionate, but it's not sufficient. And the way you can know it's not sufficient is because Palestinians are still oppressed. The sufficient amount of attention Israel deserves is the exact amount until the US and other Western nations stop enabling Israel's human rights violations. Until that happens, it's not enough attention. And the attention Palestinians get, yeah, all oppressed people deserve. It's not realistic, but great on the Palestinians for successfully building a movement. It's not a double standard because they have successfully built a movement. And, Jews should be understanding of this. We have used our influence, our activism to make anti-Semitism and the Holocaust given a special status in Western society. For example, like anti-Semitism is way more harshly punished than Islamophobia. The Holocaust is the genocide that gets the most attention. And there are other reasons for that. It's not just the success of like Jews making it well-known and popular, but Jews have successfully made our struggle part of Western consciousness, so have Palestinians. And that is both of our right to do.
That is called anti-Semitism.
So what you have just done is identify all of the things that everyone has done around you.
Anti-Semitic points.
Okay, and you are recognizing that something has been done wrong to you. Can anyone around us say that Rudy is doing something wrong to us? Yes,
Sure,
they can.
if I did,
but,
sure.
but they're not putting this label on you that because of that, then all your points fail.
No, I'm not.
You
I'm
have
not
the sense
condemning
that
the
people are
here?
being anti.
There are points that we agree on.
Flags up. You've been voted out by the majority.
But I think we'll do one more person and then we'll start winding it down. Oh, stream went off? Really? Damn. Well, I'm seeing on YouTube it went off. Oh, maybe it's the copyright thing that happened last time. Those being on YouTube, is it back? Yeah, I forgot. We can't do this Jubilee stuff. Okay. Well, last time they took it off and then put it back on. Whatever. All good. We've done plenty. I'll answer some questions and then we'll wrap it up. But I hope that gave like a little bit of a. Sorry, guys, for it going off. For those who have questions, please submit them now. We'll prioritize super chats. Let's see. So, House of Address, I think you misunderstood my position. Jihad and Zionism are distinct concepts. The comparison is that you have the same issue where one side sometimes says jihad or Zionism just means this, and the other side is saying no, in practice, jihad and Zionism has been something very different. It's not saying jihad and Zionism are the same. Though, I mean, in terms of how many people have been killed in the name of each, probably comparable. Unless you consider every time Muslims kill other people, that's jihad, but that's not really what jihad is. Or like Jews have killed more Muslims than Muslims have killed Jews, not historically, but since the creation of the state of Israel. Like if you look at it historically, like totaling the past few thousand years, Jews have killed more Muslims because of Zionism. Prior to 1948, much more Jews were killed by Muslims and vice versa. But these comparisons don't really matter, right? It's not a competition. Let's see. No, House of Atreus, you have a great misunderstanding of how the death toll. There's certainly some number of natural deaths in the list, but we know that most aren't there because natural deaths are overwhelmingly babies like 0 and 1-year-olds and elderly. But when you look at the demographic breakdown of the dead, there's no unusual spikes in young and elderly. So there's a few hundred, maybe 1,000, maybe 1,500, but there's around 9,000 natural deaths here in Gaza. Most of them are not on the list. Deepen says Israel should stop accepting Western support and then it might get congregate level of criticism. Well, it's true that Western support certainly is what helped popularize the movement. But at this point, I think people genuinely care enough that even if Western support stopped, the movement would continue. It would go from stop supporting them to actively sanctioning until the oppression is over. You compared jihad to Zionism. Jihad in practice. No, I didn't. I mean, if you're not able to understand the analogy, then I just don't know what to tell you. Like I can't just re-explain everything in basic terms. You could use an analogy. It doesn't mean you're saying those two things are the same. That's the point of an analogy. They're not the same, but they're analogous in some way. There's some similarities worth drawing, but it doesn't mean you're saying they're the same thing. I mean, I think you could. I think there's a case you could say Zionism is worse. I think there's a legitimate debate, but that wasn't the point. It was simply how terminology is used. Yeah, let me give you another example, right? Maybe this will be easier to comprehend. Some people say communism is simply XYZ, and then people who have lived under communism will say no, it's ABC. Both have a right to. Like one has a right to describe communism in theoretical terms, and the other has a right to describe communism how they've experienced it. So are you saying, or what would your conclusion be like, how dare you compare communism to Zionism? That's what you're doing, my guy. That's literally what you're doing. So House of Atreus, if I were to say I support the dismantling of the state of Israel, but I support Jews remaining on the land with the ability to self-determine. Am I a Zionist or an anti-Zionist? Noah Sirkis says, Adar, similar to how reactive defense of Israel should be thought of as hurting Israel, should the same towards the Palestinians be thought of as hurting them? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. Reactive defense of Israel should, okay, I get it. Should the same, yeah, for sure. So, right, when the pro-Palestine movement refuses to meaningfully criticize Israel or Palestinians and parts of the movement that are problematic, then they harm the movement ultimately. Yeah, for sure. without a doubt. Adar, should people be arrested in Britain for saying globalize the Intifada at a protest? I think you know me well enough to know my response to this. But no, I mean, UK has very problematic free speech laws that people are being arrested for social media posts, which is wild. What's interesting, so globalize the Intifada is interesting because, and that's also, that's another one of the terminology, right? Intifada simply means uprising. It could be a peaceful uprising, but Jews understandably interpret Intifada as violence. Another thing, how two sides are interpreting a definition differently. Because there's such a strong association with Intifada and violence, I don't know if you could assess that the chant globalize the Intifada is actually leading to violence against Jews. That might fall under incitement, which is not protected under free speech, not in the US either. I think free speech, like, we should always be very careful when limiting what people could say. It's a very bad precedent when we start limiting speech. So I would not support arresting people, but I don't think it's a good slogan. I think it's a dangerous slogan. I think there's better slogans that the pro-Palestine movement can use, that is not perceived by Jews as a call for violence, and is not perceived by potentially some Palestinians as a call for violence, right? So it's not a good term. It's not a, yeah, it's a counterproductive slogan. There's definitely much better ones. Yeah, depends. So we're in the same here. My position is protesters should stop using it. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Atreus, you didn't answer my question. If I support the dismantling of the state of Israel, but Jews can remain on the land and have their rights protected and self-determination, am I a Zionist or an anti-Zionist? So BB is saying, BB, are you still here? Because at the beginning you say, in response to me saying anti-Semitism just means anti-Jewish, and you say disagree, words matter, just saying anti-Jewish, if that's what you mean. Okay, well, so I've heard people say, I'm not Islamophobic because I'm not scared of Muslims. I just don't like them. Don't you see an issue with somebody interpreting that? So would you say Islamophobia is a bad term and we should just say anti-Muslim? Like, would you endorse changing that? It's something very similar. One of the problems with Rudy in this whole debate is he keeps using this esoteric spiritual language. He keeps going back to notion that we are one family, civilization, etc. Yeah, it's part of like how it's part of how he does things, how he describes things. There's something nice about it, but it comes off as just dishonest and disingenuous. I don't think it fully is. Like, I think he actually is happy to have one shared civilization. But he's definitely refuses to give any meaningful critique of Israel. And ultimately, he is whitewashing human rights violations, right? Rudy is a whitewasher of human rights violations, without a doubt. And I think there should be social repercussions for anybody who's doing that. Supporting Israel today with what they're doing is not different from supporting apartheid South Africa. It's not different from supporting Jim Crow or supporting slavery when that was legal. That is the moral camp these people are in. We just need to be honest about that. And we're just a few decades away from fully from that being the overwhelming consensus. And yeah, there should be social repercussions for people who support human rights violations, for sure. Okay, so House of Atreus, but wait, does anti-Zionism mean the right for Jewish self-determination, or the state of Israel needing to exist as a Jewish state? Those are two different things, right? So before you got your panties up in a bunch, you're like, no, it just means self-determination. Does it? Does it though? So I'm still waiting for an answer to your question. If somebody supports dismantling the state of Israel, but still supports Jews living on the land and having all their rights protected, are they a Zionist or anti-Zionist? It's just a one-word answer, right? Okay, let's see. Isaac says it's not. A dart keeps missing in regard to Zionism. No one opposes Japanese or Serbian or French country, just hypocrisy. No, it's just that these countries have proven their ability to exist without needing to oppress another people. If Zionism was not, if Israel was not oppressing another people, anti-Zionism would die. Like what fuels the movement is human rights violations. It's a people being oppressed. If you solve that, then anti-Zionism dies. Then you could see Israel as Japan or Serbia. But that's not what Israel currently is. Israel controls all the land between the river and the sea. In that land, you have around 6 million Palestinians that are neither sovereign or equal. This is not comparable to any other country. It's unique. It's immoral, and it's indefensible. People are rightfully opposing this. Oh, wait. Okay. So people are correcting me. Does jihad, so what does jihad mean? They're saying intifada means uprising, but what does jihad mean? Did I get that wrong? Dun, 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 dun. I want to believe Rudy's sincere, but cynical side of me thinks he's being strategic. I can understand why you reached that conclusion. Rudy seems to use a strategy similar to Destiny, acknowledging Palestinian suffer to give himself some credibility, and then gives IDF approved. Yeah, well, that's not just, that's like a very common Hasbara tactic. Every death is tragic. I don't like to see people dying, but then like not promote any real policy or criticize Israel for what they've done to contribute to such a large number of unnecessary deaths, right? So yeah, it doesn't seem sincere. I agree. Wrong. Middle Eastern culture is anti-racism, pro-equality. They have the most ethnically mixed societies with no distinction, so much so Westerners can't differentiate between ethnical groups there. I'm sorry, that is just not, that's incorrect. First of all, when it comes to equality across the board, Western nations beat, I think Scandinavian countries might be number one, but like Western Europe to America is by far number one, and some South American countries. The Middle East, Asia, Africa don't come close. This isn't even up for debate. And this is demonstrated in terms of both systemic equality as well as sentiments, right? Like anti-Black racism is extremely prevalent in Middle Eastern countries, extremely. So let's be honest. None of this justifies oppressing Palestinians, but let's be honest. Ahmed, I know you're trolling, but can you clarify what Ahmed says? Intifada means kill all the Jews, jihad means kill everybody. I know you don't mean that. So House of Atreides is saying, who will protect Jewish rights? You can have a parliament that is by default 50% Jewish, 50% Palestinian, and a constitution and a system of checks and balances that protects the rights of the people. Or you could have Jewish autonomous zones where they could have their own military in the autonomous zones, but they don't have a right to rule over a non-Jewish population and impose on them a system of inequality. Why that? Is that Zionism or anti-Zionism? Wait, Arpad, you're saying the equality across the board is common, or that in GCC countries, or it's uncommon in GCC countries? Right. So, House of a Choice, you're saying Zionism is Jewish self-determined in the form of the state of Israel. So you're saying you need to support the existence of the state of Israel, as well as their ability to impose a system of inequality. And if you do not support that, then you're anti-Semitic. That's not a defensible position, and it makes the term anti-Semitic absolutely meaningless. And Zionism has contributed greatly to anti-Semitism for so many ways. One, because it conflates human rights violations with Judaism. It is indoctrinated Jews to whitewash human rights violations. It's human rights violations in the name of protecting Jews. It's just been and it's taken a people who are historically are intellectually rigorous and compassionate and constantly, fighting for human rights, the Jewish people, and it's put them on the wrong side of history. Zionists right now are on the wrong side of history, and they are eroding moral progress. That is a 180 turn of who Jews have been for many centuries prior. So yeah, Zionism has caused us immense harm. It really is tragic. And the desire to just be safe in our homeland is one that I am sympathetic to, but in practice, it's been a disaster. America is sacrificing the economy of the whole world to do Israel's bidding. Yeah, let me give I think the narrative around that has been a little bit insufficient. So at this point, we now have good enough reason to conclude beyond reasonable doubt that Israel did play a significant role in convincing Trump to attack Iran. Rubio stated it. The White House recently put out a written report on Iran, and they mentioned Israel as one of the reasons why the attack happened. Netanyahu has visited the White House 7 times in the past year and a half. He's been trying to get U.S. presidents to fight this war for decades, and Trump was convinced. I think he also, whether it was Israeli intel or also people in his cabinet, gave him intel that regime change is likely and it'll be quick like Venezuela. So yeah, he was duped. He was convinced. I think it's almost certain that he regrets it now. But what is completely untrue about the narrative is the whole he's doing it to get the attention off the Epstein files. He's doing it because there's blackmail on him. There's no reason to believe that, and that's not needed to understand why Trump attacked. He committed to dealing with Iran for many years. He, I think, hoped he could do it through negotiation. He was then convinced by those around him, including Netanyahu, but maybe Kushner and Witkoff, and I don't know what neoconservatives are in his cabinet, but those around him very well may have convinced him that it'll be quick and easy, and he went for it. No blackmail. No, that just doesn't. And also, Israel does not control America they have influence over America, but the U.S. has way more control over Israel than vice versa, right? That's something that a lot of the pro-Palestine camp gets wrong, and we see this. Israel wants to keep fighting in Iran. The U.S. is saying no. They're working very hard for a deal. Trump forced Netanyahu into agreeing to a ceasefire in Lebanon. That was very unpopular amongst Israelis. So yeah, Israel can influence Israeli decision, whether it's through just bad intel, making a compelling case, lobbyists, whatever it may be. But ultimately, U.S. has far more influence and control over U.S. Noah's saying there's also a China angle that you might be underestimating. Yeah, I've never bought the China angle. The China angle was pushed specifically by supporters of Israel. If you look at where the China narrative came from, it wasn't just Jewish influencers, but it was and none of the extreme, like none of the super cringe Zionists. It came from a lot of like the moderates, like Quillette Magazine, Haviv Retigur, he shared it. Free Press Magazine, Kaizen, also an influencer who's actually a friend of mine from LA, who we definitely disagree on this stuff, but he pushed it. So there's a lot of these like pro-America, pro-Israel influencers. And to me, it seemed like it was very much a coordinated campaign to push a counter narrative, because everybody was blaming Israel, right? The whole narrative after U.S. and Israel attacked was Israel pulled U.S. into it. It was like overwhelming. That was the consensus. And then there are just a few people that all happen to be pro-Israel are like, no, there's this China angle that nobody's thinking about. It's, yeah, I'm not buying it. It was to like control energy stuff. I don't think so. And if there's any truth to it, it backfired spectacularly, because it's not like this actually weakened China in any meaningful way. Iran became more of a respected power. The U.S. is seen as weaker now. They still control the Strait. Trump's numbers are down. It was just a massive miscalculation, and I don't think there's good reason to think that it had anything to do with China. He wanted the win for his legacy. He wanted to be the one that says, I dealt with Iran. Obama couldn't do it. No past president could do it. I successfully did it. It was just a miscalculation. Okay, maybe we'll wrap this up. It's already 10:30 here. This was fun, guys. This was fun. And I say fun while we talk about a tough topic, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm making light of a tough topic. But at the end of the day, if we can't find reasons to smile, why are we even still living? And feel free to continue this just create a room and keep the conversation going. Yeah, one more question, sure. By the way, no, I don't know if we've ever interacted or if you're new here, but if you are, welcome to the community. Noah says, I've heard it said that Israel is the country in the region where it is most preferable to be a citizen as an Arab, Muslim, democratic rights, access to education, quality of life, etc. There are about 2 million, I believe. Is that true? If not, how does the neighboring countries compare? So this is true to a large degree, because Israel is in the Middle East, the country that has the highest quality of living. So by default, if you're a citizen of Israel, you have access to the highest quality of living. So for sure, in that regard. What is not as quantifiable or measured is what it feels like to be a minority group in a country that has either hate, fear, or mistrust of you, right? So Israel is deeply racist towards Arabs and Palestinians. And that doesn't mean you don't have many good interactions every day between both populations, but when the majority population views a minority as different or lesser, or maybe you're scared of them or you don't trust them, this affects your well-being. This takes a psychological toll. These are not optimal conditions for human flourishing. So in some sense, yeah, they very much are living the best, but in another, they're dealing with a challenge, a grievance that most other Middle Eastern countries don't have. So it's not so black and white. Benny says they also lack police protection. That's true. Yeah. Ahmed saying, I wish Israel took my country and made me a 10th class citizen. Hazard Treasure saying there are Arab police. Yeah, but that's not what Benny's saying. Benny's saying that Arab neighborhoods are not policed, so there's much more crime, right? So the murder rate in at least some Arab towns is much higher, and the police aren't doing all too much about it. So that is another grievance to have. It's also hard, like you're a Muslim or a Christian in a Jewish state, right? Many people you meet are either overtly racist or scared of you. That's not ideal, you know? Sierra Pod saying, stop propagating the talking points of self-hating Jews. Sorry, bro. I will do my best. All right, cool. Let's wrap up the stream. So when will the next stream be? Deepan, and I see you're still here. So at the beginning of last stream, I said I need to stop promising because I've been inconsistent, and it's true. And then I said, you know what? I'll be back. And then you called me out and you said, don't promise. I didn't forget that. But here I am again. So my promise is, it's not going to be a hard promise. It's going to be a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's so much harder to think at these hours. Like another thing, let me not toot my horn, but present myself with a handicap. All my streams are when I'm past my prime, right? I'm just not as sharp or clear at these hours. And that's one of the reasons I stream less, because it's just much harder for me at these times. So I am not promising the next stream, but I will make a real effort to be on again soon. I am flying east next week. I will be in Thailand for 2 weeks. I don't know if I'll stream from Thailand. Don't know what my internet connection will be, but will make a great effort to stream at least once, if not twice, before then. And with that, thank you all for joining here on YouTube. Signing off from the Galilee in the beautiful land of Israel and Palestine. Until next time, friends.